And that's how long it takes to get to Prescott. What's going on, everybody? This is the Cover Band Confidential Podcast, the podcast for cover band musicians and band leaders to learn how to rock more and suck less in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, Dan Ray.
That will make more sense later on. How are you doing, Dan?
You know, I'm all right. I have, I've mentioned my growing collection of physical ailments. This one, the long-term one, I've back flares up and spasm since high school. And it's doing it right now. I canceled rehearsal today because there's no chance I'm going to stay. Got an acoustic show Saturday, so it has to be sorted out. Then has to be no option.
I see.
So that's where we're at. All that.
You go in with like a sorcerer, some kind of
chicken bones
potion
involved. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Some tinctures and some poultices. No, it's just time. Time's the only thing. Time and stretching. And so that's all.
You said a phrase that I was not familiar with.
What's that?
In the pre-show talk. Well, something about moving and how it's good for you. Can you just like say
it's a thing that I've heard a lot of PTs and massage therapists say, which is motion is lotion, which is like, if you've got pain, babying it is usually not the thing, unless in some cases it is.
I don't think I like it. I don't think I like that phrase.
Motion is lotion. I don't think I've heard. I don't know. In my experience, it's been true.
That's anyway.
I'm not going to follow you where I know you're going. You're just.
Oh, I'm fine. Okay, so we had the weekend off.
Nice.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's been a minute since that has been something that's happened.
And you went somewhere fancy. I saw some pics.
We did. So this is the weekend before my wife's birthday. And last year for her big 4-0, we did, I held an event at this place called the Claremont Hotel. I'm sorry, it's the Hotel Claremont. And it's in our old neighborhood where we got married, where we were living when we first got hitched. And then the only thing that you did at the Hotel Claremont was heroin. But they've changed it up. They've did a full renovation, and now it's this beautiful boutique hotel. And I got a suite, which had this huge, it had like a sitting area and then the bedroom, but the bathroom had like a clawfoot tub because it was really like swanky.
Yeah.
Because we've just been running around like crazy, and she deserved a break. And so that's what we did. And we had some friends come down. We had a really nice dinner. Then they came back to the suite because, well, the digs were so nice, and we got a couple bottles of wine and just hung out for a bit, and it was perfect.
Sweet party. How was the heroin?
Well, again, that's what you used to do there.
Oh.
The most decadent thing I had was room service. So we'll just leave it at that.
Room delivered heroin. That's not bad.
It was a really nice French sandwich for breakfast. That's about as wild as I got.
Croque monsieur?
No, like just literally the jambon de beurre kind of thing with like a watercress salad. It was great. Looking ahead, we've got a gig this coming Friday. This is a gala of sorts, a single 90-minute set, pretty easy. We've been talking about adding keys to the band. I feel like this is something that's been constant since this started. We've got another candidate who is supposed to be coming out, and we had the luxury of putting somebody on stage in ears, in tracks, and just kind of play under them, because we can record the show and play it back and see what they're actually playing, or just it gives us the ability to kind of work somebody in over time,
sure,
without all the pressure. So it's a female keyboard player, so that's an interesting dynamic. We haven't had two girls in the band before, so we'll just have to see how how the vibe goes and see how things go.
That's great.
And then we've got this is the only show that we've got, and then we've actually got some legitimate time off, 3 weekends in a row, which is beautiful, considering we've been just so gung-ho, just nonstop since, beginning of July, really.
For sure. I've been thinking about finding a keyboard player. They're hard to find, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
But it would make life somewhat easier in terms of the real commitment to tracks. If I could find somebody who could really replicate well all the stuff that I'm doing.
You kind of said two conflicting things, because the issue is that they're hard to find.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually they're hard to find because they're busy. So if you found somebody who could perfectly replicate all of those things, and then they just were a keyboard player that worked, then you would be in the same spot you were. So I still think tracks are the way to go. Having one person be the linchpin of everything is, not great. And
For sure. No, especially, I mean,
talking to me.
any keyboard player you find is going to be in 8 bands. So
Yeah,
that's
sure.
definitely true.
And, I feel like we kind of hit this sweet spot of like former pros that just want to do something that's not a huge commitment. It's, 2 to 4 gigs a month, good pay and that kind of thing. So hopefully it all works out. If it's not a good fit, we'll just continue doing what we've been doing for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. You know what is a big deal though? This week's review.
Oh, I'm excited about it.
It's a fresh one.
Yeah.
This one came in last week.
I haven't had one in a while. This is the first one in a few weeks.
We had a couple pop up towards the end of July, beginning of August, and we'll just, hopefully it's the beginning of the deluge.
Yeah.
Of
wave
ones. Yes, absolutely. So this one's from Chris, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. It says, Dan and Adam are down to earth, fun. He didn't say funny, engaging, and full of advice based on real, current, and relevant experiences. This podcast is such a great resource for musicians everywhere. This is Chris from Wild Frontiers. Not
it's 3 words.
Like frontiers,
Wild
but Frontiers. Yeah. Clever.
That's a good name.
Dayton, Ohio.
Yep.
Which actually I got family up that way. So big thanks to Chris for the kind words.
There
And
you go.
if you want to know if I've got family near your town, leave a review. Drop your town in, and I guess I'll say it.
Yeah.
A couple of other housekeeping things. Want to shout out Ross Coder, one of our brand new annual patrons. He joined last night. Got his invitation out, and he's already in the Slack, and we're very excited for that.
He's done his introduction post. Off to the races.
Off to the races. That's what we're at. Also, talking about the some of the non-pod content, I released a review for the Maestro DMX that included a little discount code. And the president of the company emailed me this week and said that that review and that code is the #1 affiliate in their entire corporation. So must have said something right.
Go us.
And I will continue to make content for that product because I'm still using it. It's actually what's doing my backlighting right now. So
I need to play around with it some more. Maybe I'll do that. I meant to do it over the weekend. I was laid up. So I have these 2 cheap movers, and now I have a profile for them. And now I brought home the wireless DMX and the right cable to get audio into the Maestro DMX because it takes 2 RCAs. It's just native plug to my ecosystem. I got a special cable for it. So I should play around with that some. I've been meaning to do that. And thanks for reminding.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's it as far as housekeeping and such goes, and we can just get right into the meat of the conversation. All right. So I had dropped a little bit of this email a couple weeks back as a review, but this comes from Steve. And Steve had a really interesting question, and I think Dan and I kind of underestimated the importance or the...
There's a key reaction we had to this that when we did the math didn't really hold up. We had to rethink ourselves. So
yeah. So, I think we might be, we had to check our privilege. How about that?
Yeah, there you go.
So Steve says, guys, love your show and find it very interesting and helpful with all of your gigging advice. Could you talk about flaky, unprofessional, or plain out jerks we sometimes have to put up with? I've been in bands for 30 years, and for the most part, it's been pure bliss, and playing on stage is my drug. It's great. But sometimes it's pure hell because of the one band member, in parentheses, the guy. I think we've all been in there. I live in Prescott, Arizona, and in addition to it being cliquey, at times we're limited with our gene pool and say talent pool. How do you guys deal with the cards you have when it's not the best hand?
Right.
Thanks.
Right. And so I read this and I said, well, Prescott, Arizona, I mean, I live in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's a pretty small town too overall, quarter to a third of a million people in city limits. And then we Googled Prescott. Prescott has like 47,000 people. So like an order of magnitude less than what I'm dealing with. And it's 100 miles from Phoenix. So it's not like people are going to commute from the nearest big town for rehearsal.
I mean, right. Yeah. You might do it for like a big gig or what have you, but otherwise you are kind of where you are.
Yep. So that put that I was about to say, like, suck it up and broaden your horizons in town, but I get it. It may be a expression of the size of town I live in, which can look small, but in fact has a pretty deep bench. But I get that, man. Case in Prescott, Arizona, or places like it.
Yeah, and to me, there's two questions here. It's how do you deal with people who suck, and that's got its own
Yep.
set
We
of
talk about that.
steps.
Yep.
If as it were. But the other one is how do you deal with the cards you've been dealt, which basically like I've got this talent pool. How do I maximize my whatever? So that's kind of what we want to deal with. Which one do you want to kind of hop in on
Let's
first?
talk about people who suck.
I mean, that's definitely the more fruitful, lively topic of the two.
Yep.
So I have definitely been in situations where there was a particular person or a group of people in a band or, music situation that were just not fun to be around. And I also would like to note that there have been times when I was more than likely that person in another situation.
Sure.
So, boils down to a couple of things. It's primarily insecurity, just personal stuff. But then there's also just people who have, ulterior motives or may have substance abuse issues that kind of play into some of these personality clashes and that kind of stuff. So the thing that I have always tried to do is make the best of whatever situation I'm in, but I tend to keep track of the people that I don't enjoy working with purely just because if I get in a bind, like I'm not going to call those people. I don't want to be affiliated with them. In the Metro Atlanta area, I have the luxury of being able to find other people that I don't want to deal with because there's enough people to go around.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. There are flaky, unprofessional, or jerks. And those are three kind of distinct categories. We chose to lose a bassist early on in my current project who was a full-time musician, full-time musician, part-time waiter, who was in a bunch of projects, and we knew that I wasn't going to keep him employed full-time. So it had to be that way. And he got himself spread pretty thin, and then he started bailing on commitments when he got a better offer.
Right.
Which is weird because his excuse was, well, I'm a professional. Revenue. But in fact, bailing on something you said you'd be at is the least professional thing you could possibly do. So that was a funny juxtaposition. I talked to him about it. He'd ever see my side.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, he just very much clung to like, look, man, I got to do what I do. Okay. Well, that's fine. This clearly isn't working for you. Thanks. I need at least when you've committed, I need it to be real. And
better to know that now, I guess.
For sure. Yeah, it was early in the days of that band. We had 2 gigs with him, and then the sub for him when he flaked on my 3rd gig was the person who came in full time. And he recommended her, and she was great. So he kind of took care of us on his way out. I've also had people early on in my previous project. The bassist for that came highly recommended, had played with other co-frontman for many years, and just fell apart on stage. He knew all the music, but in our second show of that band, I was calling songs early. I was skipping to the last verse because he was not playing the song. I don't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was inebriated. I don't know what was happening. And when we talked with him about it, he was like, yeah, well, I screwed up. I guess you probably want to get rid of me. I was like, dude, I literally said to him, well, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be on this call, like, well, I guess it's over, and you're not going to promise me anything about how it's going to go next time, then it's over 100%. You're telling me it's over. He's like, oh, well, no, you're telling me it's over. No, buddy. No, no. I'm telling you that didn't go good. It go better. And if it's not going to be you, it's going to be somebody. He said, well, all right, it's been fun. So he kind of already decided. It was a really weird conversation.
Yeah. So it seems like maybe, but again, to me, that sounds like an insecure person.
Yes.
Kind of making sure that the internal dialogue that they feel about themselves gets,
No, this is the thing.
Acted out.
Insecurity will cause you to set up the world to match your insecurity.
Yeah.
That will absolutely. And that's what that was. I think you're right. Moved on, found a good guy.
I think the lesson there is that there will be the right person for whatever position that you're in, but you also have to understand that having the perfect person would be great, but having the next best thing is the next best thing.
Especially if you are in an environment where compromise is a necessity, which it sounds like we'll get to. It's the second question.
So, yeah, I mean, I've been in similar situations where, I had played with a person in a particular capacity and they were competent. And then I threw, one of my gigs at them and they showed up to rehearsal like 3 days before the event and didn't have anything. And I had to fire them after the rehearsal. And then he was like, he had the audacity to ask me for money, which I was pretty, flummoxed, turbed in other words
Yeah.
by. I've never crapped my own bed and then asked for, well, money.
Right.
I'm sure. So yeah, that's fun. But again, those are the lessons that you learn. And these are the kind of things that, like, as a band leader, you go through these things because if you're in charge of the lineup, you've got to make decisions around stuff. Now, for me, I've said it dozens of times on this show, is I'll take hangover chops any day of the week. And so I would much rather play with some musician who may not have the exact technical chops that I need if they're easy to work with.
Yeah.
I think that's much better. I've had really talented players in every single position in this band. And, I mean, I've got the luxury of knowing that people come and go in projects, and that's its own, conversation. But the overlap of very, very talented and easy to work with, it's tough.
Especially when they're pro-am folks, I think at the professional level, people know where their bread is buttered and they sort of to treat people with respect, to come correct in terms of their preparation. Weekend warriors let themselves off of that a lot. And so, that's the thing. I think one of the things that you just said that deserves a little more digging into is, as a band leader, look, you might not get paid more, you may work more and not get paid. I don't care. The hard conversation is still your job.
Yeah.
And I don't care that you don't like them. Nobody likes them. I don't care that you don't know what you're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. You get into it, you lay out the issue, you give some options. Whenever I have had performance issues, and I was ready to go into this with the first bassist who had already decided he was gone.
Yeah.
I'm always ready to work with people. I want to see them be like, no, dude, Dan, I'm sorry. I know I screwed it up. Man, it's going to be all different from here. It's great. I love that. Any advice that I can give you about how to get there? Because I've climbed this mountain, like, happy to do that. Happy to work with you and be your partner in that. I'm on your side. That's the conversation I really want to have with them, not bad show means you're out.
Yeah. And also I'll go ahead and see myself out. I won't even bother
Right. That was
explaining
a whole other pathology. That was something else was going on there. Right. So I think you want to come into these conversations, even when it's like, okay, buddy, third strike, you're out.
Oh, sure.
That's, you need to set like how to have these conversations is to rehearse a little bit, not too much, but some, so that you know direction you want it to go, but know that there's a human being having this conversation, a hard conversation with you that they are possibly not prepared for. It might come as a surprise. They might have emotional reactions to it. Who knows? So you got to be willing to dance with all that and be able to empathize without stepping down from your position. Being a manager of people at work for a decade or so has really steeled me for this. I knew I'd upgraded as a boss the day I sent home a programmer for hygiene.
That was a fun story.
Yeah. It was preparing for that was way worse than actually doing it. Well, closing my door when he came in was the worst part. But straight conversation, and it never happened again. So, and then that's the goal. That's the goal. You tell the truth, you tell what you need, and the person corrects. And if they don't, then you have the next conversation, which is, hey, you didn't correct.
Yeah. And that really is going to tell you everything that you need to know about a situation. When you have to have a conversation like that, the way that the other person receives it will tell you everything you need to know about whether they're going to be a good fit long-term, whether they have any sort of self-awareness about them. Because I think there's a lot of folks that literally don't know that what they do is off-putting or awkward or whatever.
They can't smell themselves.
Well, yeah, sure. But also, I guess,
literally and metaphorically.
From a personality. Yeah. And so a lot of times it is just bringing it to their attention. And I've definitely had people like point stuff out to me. And it literally happened this weekend where something that I didn't consider, just the absence of thought caused somebody else to feel a certain way, and wasn't my intent, wasn't what I was trying to set out to do.
Yep.
But that doesn't matter.
Right.
My intent doesn't change the fact that it affected somebody negatively.
That's
So
right.
that's what's going to happen if you've got people around you that actually are invested in you and whatever your project is, and the success of whatever you guys are trying to do together.
Right.
So if it's worth having the conversation, like if somebody's a jerk and they've got a reputation, like odds are whatever you say to them, one, isn't going to be a surprise to them, and two, isn't probably going to move the needle. And so, if you can avoid working with unpleasant people, you should. And if you feel like it's worth having the conversation, knock yourself out, but it may not, it may not be worth the trouble.
Right.
But if you're in a situation where something needs to be dealt with, deal with it, and do your best to respond and not react. That's a mantra that I use a lot, where when you have to have a tough conversation with whoever, you make sure that you're responding to what they're saying and not reacting to what they're saying.
Right.
So use your your logic and your thinky parts, and not just your emotions, because your emotions tend to come out a bit hotter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when there's a chance that person's not going to like the conversation. I personally feel like, and I feel like this at work, I want to be that boss or band leader who gives people, like, I want to look back and say, God, I could have let go of that guy 3 months ago and life would have been so much better, but I'm glad I gave him every chance. I want to be that guy, right? Last person I let go of at work, I gave 6 months. Didn't turn out for him, but he had every chance to recover, and plenty of access to me. And sometimes you just know, sometimes it's not going to, in terms of respond instead of react, when it's the case that there's likely to be an emotional reaction from them, you just have to know that, be prepared for it. Empathy, and don't match their energy. Let their energy wash over you like a wave at the beach. It washes back out again. That's all that is. But it takes that. You have to be the one, and it's not fair, it sucks, and no one loves it. It's the game.
So, talking about that, it reminded me of this situation. This was pretty early on into our deal. It was another quest for a keyboard player. Guy was I think he had like a Craigslist ad or something, and reached out, and we met up a couple of times, and he said he wanted the gig, and things were going fine. The first show that he was going to be on was a road show. It was in Tennessee, about 4 hours away, and it was one of those things where you had the whole day to get there, and load-in was at a particular time, and everybody was kind of rolling up separately because that's just the way it was going to work logistically. And we're right outside of the town that we're supposed to be playing in, and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to stop and pick up an air mover, so I'm going to be about 45 minutes to an hour late to sound check. Is that okay?" And I said, "No, it's not okay. The timeline is the timeline, because we have this limited window to do what we're doing. And so I need you there when it's time for load in." His response was to text me and say that that was messed up, and he didn't use messed up. And it went so far as to go on the phone and then just ad hominem attacks, like, "You're a joke, your band's a joke." I was like, but in that moment, I chose to not do it. In that moment, that person taught me everything I need to know about them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, without a doubt, it was like, I will never work with this person again. I don't want anything to do with them. And you just don't need people like that in your life. So,
and have you crossed paths with him since then? I mean,
no, but we have mutual friends and stuff. And it was funny. I was texting with a buddy of mine that we've been playing in bands since, the early 2000s. And I was like, "Oh my," I found out he was in this band and with this particular lineup. And I texted him, like, "Oh my gosh, your guitar player hates me." And we just kind of had a laugh about it.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's like we were blocking each other on socials. I don't know. It is what it is. And it sucked. The last thing you want to hear, like right before you're trying out this brand new lineup, is all of the things that, like, you feel are true,
Right.
And, some butthole is, I guess, verifying it for you, but there's nothing you can do about those things.
Right.
Somebody was given a reasonable response and responded unreasonably. And that's that.
Yeah.
And so in that situation, there was nothing to do. Well, actually, there was a lot to do because I had to redo all the tracks and make
Right.
sure that I was scrambling up until like downbeat. It was not my best night, but I was in charge and that was what needed to happen. And so we literally on the fly with like an hour to go had to change everything up and do it to it. So that's what we did.
Yeah. I mean, taking the high road isn't easy. It's what to do.
So I don't know. If you can avoid it, avoid it. But if you can't avoid it, hit it head on because it's not going away.
Right.
And the more you sit and just let it fester, the worse it's going to feel. And then, when it does come to a head, like there's going to be like the gloves will be off and there's going to be no responding. It's all reacting and it's just going to,
Right.
it's not good.
No, yeah. The deeper you let it get to you, the weaker you're going to be at responding and not reacting. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, every time we have these conversations, I just think how friggin' blessed I am with my current crew. Like, it's the first time I've had a bassist that doesn't run 20 minutes late.
Yeah. That's cool.
Maybe ever. Had jokes about bassist time, He was at our last gig ahead of me. Like, I was there with the PA and Ben's already there. Like, what are you even doing here? You walk in and plug in and play. What's this? But he helped me load. He helped me. He was like all about it. So yeah. So maybe we should shift to how does it color this conversation when you live in a place without a deep bench of players?
So I think there's a couple of things. And I think that the word is compromise.
Yes.
But what you do to compromise, I think can vary wildly. So I'm going to use bass player as an example. That just seems like
for some reason,
it seems to be the topic du jour.
Yeah.
That's the ones that people are having trouble with currently. So you want to find somebody to play bass in the group. And is the issue that there's not enough of them so that's kind of what I'm trying to
or
figure out.
that you're stuck with somebody because getting a replacement's hard.
Sure. And I guess it just depends on what it is that is deficient.
Yeah.
So flakiness is something that you can communicate. Unprofessional, that's usually something that you can educate somebody on. Jerk is a jerk and there's not much you can do about it. But I feel like there are ways to play to somebody's strengths because everybody's got a particular thing that they're good at and may require different choices material wise. Doesn't necessarily mean that like you're settling or that you're sacrificing the quality of your show. It just means that maybe you play different songs or you do things a different way that work for the lineup. I mean, we have tried to do Dead Man's Party every single Halloween for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And the limitation is us.
Right.
We're the ones who can't figure it out. So that is something that we just have to okay, we're just not going to do Oingo Boingo stuff until we have enough time to really dig in, which it never happens.
No.
That's the issue.
No,
is you can't do it at a sound check and then, be ready when it's Oingo Boingo.
Chance. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a choice that we made. We don't do a lot of Van Halen. We do some Van Halen, but certain things, we're just not going to do that. There's certain songs that are too high or too low. Not going to do those because that's just what I'm working within the parameters of what.
Yeah. Or we don't have the guitar firepower for it. That's a common, not everyone's going to be able to cop Van Halen guitar. Right. I think when we talk about compromise, it's really important to be clear and to be thoughtful about what our non-negotiables are.
Sure.
Right. So am I okay with a bassist who shows up to 20 minutes late every time that I can just rely on?
Yeah.
I can live with that. Honestly, I can. I have lived with it. I can live with it. I hate it, but I can live with it.
Yeah.
Can I live with a player who gets drunk and fumbles through 1 in 3 shows? Probably can't. I probably can't live. Can I deal with somebody who in the practice room is just like a diva and has to have it their way? I could, but I don't want to put the rest of my people through that.
Yeah, that's I could tolerate that to a point, if you're thinking through, all right, well, we've got these next 5 dates and this has to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I'm dreading being in the rehearsal room with them, I know everybody else is too. And I know they're all looking at me like, how come you do this? So maybe that's general ability to hang is a non-negotiable. Point is, you need to
Yep.
think through all these things yourself, because in a town like Prescott, Arizona, you're not going to have 20 bassists to pick from. We are,
Right.
but let's say you're not. And so you look at your current bassist and you say, I probably still have bassists out there like this. I've had a bit of luck, but you compare the lift of getting replacement on board versus what it's taking to compensate for how this person is, and the work I'd be willing to put into converting them into something that would work. And you got to make that call.
The other compromise is you don't have a bass player. You just track it.
Yeah.
And that's a cheap solution. That's a low drama solution. And it's honestly it's not as hard as you may think.
Um,
And I honestly don't know if people would notice
I
necessarily.
have evidence that they do not.
Yeah.
A lot of civilians have no idea there is such a thing as a bass guitar. They just think that's a guitarist up there. They weren't standing there, but you were still hearing low end happening in the song. Like a lot of non musicians are just going to be like, "Yeah, sounds great."
Periphery doesn't have a bass player. They,
Yeah,
you know, I think that kind of answers it for you. Like if it's cool for Periphery to play to bass tracks because the guy who produces all of their records and is also their bass player is not going to tour with them, like that's just the choice they made. And they're like, we're not going to bring another guy in. We'll keep what we got, and we'll just, he can stay home, and we'll just play it.
my senior year of high school, I went to my classic rock radio station in town had like a 12 bands for $12 kind of concert, and
Hmm.
they were names that at the time, classic rock was not in really its resurgence phase. So it was ELO, Edgar Winter, and the headliner was Santana, who was amazing,
Hmm.
and a bunch of others. But I did see at that show Steppenwolf, who also did not have a bassist. Their bass was being played by the organ player. And yeah, I knew enough to be like, there's no bass guitar happening right now. And then I realized it was the keyboard guy playing, bass lines on the keys. I don't know if that's their usual lineup or if that's how they record it or anything like that, but that was certainly what was on stage there in 1981.
So yeah, there's a lot of ways you could skin that cat, and I'm necessarily advocating taking gigs away from working musicians, but if it's feasible and the situation is as dire as it's being described as, might be worth a shot. Because if that's the thing that's holding you back from being able to perform, then yeah, do it.
For sure.
And beyond that, it's trying to find other kinds of compromises, picking the right stuff and making sure that everybody that's there is bought in and feel like their strengths are being presented in the right way. And I mean, that's really all you can do.
Right.
In our current situation, like our lineup is probably, as far as like green room goes, like the best hang out of all of them. I think
Good.
we're all kind of in the same stage of life and roughly same background, same tastes and what have you. So it's been really nice. I feel like honestly, I'm probably the hard one to deal with because when I get stressed out, I get really flustered. I get, I when I get anxious, I get flustered. Like, yeah, I'm definitely right now. I'm that person in our group, but I know it
Yeah, it's good to know.
and I'm working on it. That's the hard part is the accountability part. Like, no, I've totally mishandled this situation, or yeah, I totally let this get to me and I shouldn't have. That's where I'm at. So, run for the hills if you want to work with me. Like, just know I'm that guy. But yeah, there's two things that you can do. You can either put up with it or you can hit it head on. And so try and figure out what makes the most sense in your particular situation.
Yeah.
And listen, if you want to send us an email, like throw it out, like if you've got like a current situation, and I'd be happy to throw our thoughts at it. We won't, it's just let us know. We'll put our brains together and
For sure.
send you what we think you should do. So it goes for every single person listening to this. Hit us up, coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. You got a question? We got answers, maybe.
Yeah. One thing I've come to realize in the last couple of months at my work is have among my superpowers, I think it's important to think a little bit about find your superpower. And one of mine is talking people off ledges.
Okay.
It's a pretty good one.
I've had to do it a couple of times, but yeah, that's definitely being able to provide perspective in a tense moment. That's good. All right.
Cool.
Well, I think we hit it. I think we nailed it.
Like it.
you know, we definitely, we apologize for everybody in a small town because we really look at it the right. No, you just find like one of the other 27,
Yeah.
you know,
How hard can it be?
yeah. Well,
Could be
our
hard.
bad guys.
Could be hard. Yeah.
It could be. So do what you got to do, even if that means, you know, your bass player is a laptop. All right, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate all the support. This has been a really cool season. The community's been growing, and you know, I feel like we got the wind to our backs and just really enjoying the ride. So thanks to each and every one of you. If you want to support the show, you can listen to what's about to happen here, and we'll just call it for this week. In Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina.
You've been listening to the Cover Band Confidential podcast for the week of August 23rd, 2024.